What's going on, everyone? Happy Wednesday. I know you're surprised to see me here during the week, but we've got to talk about the wild card games and recap the good, the bad, and the ugly. And Thomas is actually with me, but not in the hosting seat. He is going to be here helping me and Dan talk about what happened this weekend, the good, the bad, the ugly, how these losing teams performed, and just talk about everything that happened in the past. Because when moving the chains will go into the future. So, welcome Dan and Thomas. How are you guys?
Doing good. I'm happy to be here. It's looking like a nice little setup we got. So be able to talk some sports and talk some football with you guys is always a good thing.
I like how you said we were all wearing black.
I know.
Yes,
it's crazy.
Yes,
we're all mourning the losses.
We didn't even coordinate that. It just was natural.
Yeah. I feel like we just needed to have our moment of silence for the teams that did not make it to the divisional round.
Yeah.
Because although we are happy doing this show, we must take a few moments to take a look back on the teams that are no longer with us.
Yeah, 100%.
Agreed.
Especially because, I don't know about you guys, but I thought these games were going to be more exciting. We all knew what the outcomes were going to be, right? We knew who was going to win. Anyone that picked the Broncos was really hoping on a prayer. And I think there were people on Saturday and Sunday picking the Broncos on your show, right, Dan? People
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. Christy, I think she chose the Broncos. Unfortunately, I'm going to be able to laugh at her about that for a little while.
Please,
that was crazy. That was wild.
Yeah, I think I was watching and I was like, wait, there's no way she really means that. Well, let's kick it off with the first question I want to ask everyone watching and you guys is, what is one word you would use to describe the losing teams from this weekend? And we're not going to be too harsh, but I just want to hear what you guys thought for the performances. So let's start off with the Broncos loss. Dan, what's your word?
Man, my first word for the Broncos loss is expected. You know what I mean? We just talked about. I mean, it's expected. It's something that I knew it was going to happen. I mean, the Broncos they had a nice season. It was nice to see them do their thing. They grew a lot. You know what I mean? That whole squad, they grew. The quarterback grew. The identity that they have, they took on an identity throughout the season. And as much as I don't like to give the coach their credit, I got to give him a little credit for being able to turn things around and kind of get those guys motivated and get to the playoffs. So it was a nice run for them, but it was expected, man. I knew they were going to come short. Especially playing that team that they were playing, you know what I mean? That's a juggernaut in so many ways. So, they just didn't have a legitimate shot, in my opinion. So it's expected.
All right, what about you, Thomas?
So I would have cheated and had the one word for all the teams that lost, but I'm not going to do that. I'll wait until the last team. That way y'all can hold on to a string here. But the one word that I have for the Broncos losing is, and this is a new vocabulary word for you guys, stolidity. Okay?
Okay.
Hear me out. All right? The definition of the word is showing no strong emotions or feelings. I watched that entire 60 minutes, and it looked like I saw a Broncos team that after they scored a touchdown showed nothing but stolidity. It was on full display. It was for the whole world to see on a wonderful Sunday afternoon. So the word for the Broncos is stolidity. They ain't show nothing after that first touchdown drive. It was
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I saw that and I was like, okay, Bills are down. This is kind of exciting. And then they were just stagnant the entire time. I think my word for the Broncos is progress. I think a lot of people had bad, low, minor, small expectations for Bo Nix, and then he came out and did the complete opposite. I mean, everyone jokes about how old he is in the league and how much college football he's played, but I think that really leveled him up to be the quarterback that he is in the league, and in a very competitive division with back-to-back Super Bowl champions, So I think for him to put up the football that he did in this entire season, it's been very good, and they're on the road to, a good turnaround, I think. And the entire AFC West, I think, is turning around, except for obviously the Raiders, but they're not even in this conversation. So that's my spiel on that. All right, next up, give me your one word for the Steelers. I feel like this is a fun one. Thomas, you go first.
I'm keeping it going with the vocabulary today. I had this ready. You drew up some good questions for us. So the word that I have for the Pittsburgh Steelers, after I've already expressed, and I've put on Moving the Chains last week, and put on Off the Dome last week, on the Rankings Roundtables finale last week, so on and so forth. They were lifeless, but that's not the word I'm going to use. The word I'm going to use for the Pittsburgh Steelers is nadir. Nadir.
Okay.
The definition of the word nadir means the lowest point or worst moment of something. And I felt like anyone who decided to take their time out to watch the Ravens and Steelers game just experienced a nadir moment. There's so many other things that you could have done with your free time. It was late at night. It was on Amazon Prime. You could have watched Coach Prime. You could have watched anything else. Could have done anything else with your time. But you decided to invest time into watching this playoff game. That is a nadir moment if you had to watch it from beginning to end. That is my word for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay, I'm actually gonna, before Dan chimes in, I'm gonna tell you 22.1 million people watched that game, which is down by 3%. Yeah. From the 23 million that watched the Dolphins-Chiefs game on Peacock.
Oh.
Just letting you know. All right, Dan, go ahead.
Well, that's interesting to put those numbers out there. I'm gonna go with the word redundant, and what I mean by that is that there's a lot of questions about Mike Tomlin. There's questions about Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, and the word redundant means not or no longer needed or useful. So the fan, and the reason I'm saying this is because I don't believe it, right? I don't believe that, it's redundant to have Mike Tomlin, but a lot of fans for some reason in Pittsburgh are asking for him to be fired. They don't want him there because he hasn't won a playoff game in some years, right? A lot of people are saying that it's redundant to have Russell Wilson there because he's at the end of his career and everybody thinks that, it's time to move in the youth direction. Go with Justin Fields. Some people say Justin Fields is redundant because he shouldn't be a starting quarterback in the NFL. So it's a whole lot of redundancy, going on in that situation. And that's why I use that word. Is it, they have a lot of questions to answer when it comes to the offseason. Mike Tomlin has already been posed several of those questions this week. So, it's interesting to see which way they will go. Will they say, hey, we no longer need you, Russ. We no longer need you, Justin. We're going to go in a different way. Will they keep one of those guys? I think Tomlin's safe, to be honest. But, we'll see what happens with the rest of the squad.
I think we are on the same page because mine was aging. You could tell the defense was doing a very good job, but the defense is getting old, right? They can't continue to maintain the success of the past with an offense that cannot convert points when they put their work out on the field. So I definitely think sticking with Russell Wilson is kind of aging. I think Mike Tomlin with an old QB is aging. Like, it's all running its course. So I definitely think you and I are on the same idea of the Steelers need some type of revamping, refreshing, new eyes, new life, and just to see somebody else that can bring the vibrance back to the Steelers that literally all the other teams have when they've won or gotten to this point. So we're on the same page here. All right, Dan, back to you. The next one is going to be the Packers. What is your one word on the Packers? Your favorite.
You said not to be too harsh, right? But I'm just going to go here.
Do your worst, man. Do your worst.
I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna save that for another one as well. But
Okay.
with the Packers, when it comes to the Packers, it's what I mean. I don't know. Dang, you caught me with this one because I had a good word, but I want to use it for the Vikings. I'm gonna use fraud. I think I think they were fraudulent as a team. I think they got away with some things, and same thing with the Vikings. But I'm gonna assign the Green Bay Packers this because what I mean by fraudulent in this regard is with the Packers. Jordan Love, he puts up some decent numbers, and I'm not saying he's a terrible quarterback, but it's fraudulent to act like he's an elite quarterback at this point in time. And I think there are a lot of people that label him as such. When you go out and you get Josh Jacobs and you lean heavily upon that run, that lets me know that what did you do in the offseason? You said, okay, he's not ready. The coaching staff, I think that organization understands that he's not able to lead them. And when you have a team that you run up against that's difficult to run against, like the Philadelphia Eagles, then you got to put the ball in Jordan Love's hands. And it's fraudulent to think that he would actually be able to go out there and kind of, lead them to victory. We saw what happened: interceptions, bad play, so on and so forth. When the ball is in his hands and you have to depend on him, he lets you down. If you can lean upon that run and they run against teams that are not good against the run, then he'll look like a world beater. So it's fraudulent to expect him to think that he was going to be able to do that.
Yeah, I could see that. All right, Thomas, are you ready for our next dictionary word?
I think I am. I don't know if I can. I feel like me being an Eagles fan, I feel like I should be preferenced on the word that I used to describe the Packers loss.
I mean, Dan couldn't even get it out, so
I couldn't. And I can only imagine what it's like in division. But if I had to use a word to describe the Packers' performance, it's lifeless. I think what I saw them, the way that Jordan Love just gave the game to us was on full display. It was one thing to because this is the thing that we love about these quote unquote gunslinger quarterbacks. They have these games where they throw for 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns, and maybe 1 or 2 picks. And it's like, oh my goodness, we love you. You're one of the best to ever do it, right? Then you have these games like we saw with Jordan Love where it's like he just could not stop throwing it to the other team. And it happened 3 times. So I would say lifeless because from the opening kickoff to the very end, you just saw an offense that just, did not want to convert on 3rd down, had turnover after turnover. They just looked like they didn't want to be there. And then on top of that, with the injuries that they had to deal with, doesn't help matters, obviously, but I would definitely use the word lifeless to describe what I saw from the Packers. I thought I would see more.
Yeah, this is tough. I think the Packers just got an unlikely hand, so I'm just going to use unfortunate for my word. I think having as many injuries as they had in that playoff matchup it's a difficult thing to come out of for anybody. And then combine that with losing Christian Watson the week before, it's just too many people that you're trying to adjust without. And there was no other offensive weapons for him except for Josh Jacobs. So I'm just going to use unfortunate for them. And I think that's wrapping that one up. All right, Chargers. Dan.
Chargers. You start with me. Let's see. For the Chargers, I'm gonna go. Dang.
Dan's so disappointed with everybody.
Yeah, I am, man. I'm trying to keep it. You know what I mean?
He's disappointed.
I'm trying to be positive, a little bit positive, because these are playoff teams, right? They are playoff teams, so you got to give them the credit where the credit is due. Disappointing, I'm gonna say. I'm gonna just say disappointing. I chose the Chargers, to do some real damage. and I'm gonna say disappointing. They disappointed me. They let me down a little bit in ways that I think that they should have been much better on the football field. Running the ball, they should have been better. They should have been better defensively. So these are all things that I really hang my hat on when it comes to a Jim Harbaugh team, and I think they were disappointing in that regard to me.
Okay, Thomas.
I think the word for me is impetuous.
Okay.
A lot of vocabulary. I'm expanding everybody's vocabulary today, okay? Bear with me. Impetuous. It means done quickly without thought. When I saw that game in Houston, after that first quarter, which was, I think for both teams, both of them were, trying to get accustomed to the playoff atmosphere and, trying to get some of the butterflies out of their stomach, if you will. Once that first quarter was over, it's like the Texans decided to treat the Chargers like they weren't meant to be there in the first place. And it was literally exactly how I described it. It was done without thought. And then with Justin Herbert having to throw 4 interceptions, it just kept going progressively worse. So if I had to pick a word to describe the Chargers and the way that their season ended, it would be impetuous. Because it seemed like after that first quarter, they were completely done. And it was like no one thought twice about it, especially Houston.
Yeah, I'm going to use redundant. I feel like we've seen this before. We have seen Justin Herbert be that guy. We have seen them lack an offensive weapon. We have seen them have drops in very crucial moments. Like, we've seen this all before. And so I think the way that the season played out in comparison to last year, yes, major improvement. But I do think that when the crunch time came up, we're seeing the redundancy that exists within the Chargers, and it's almost like the Chargers gonna charger it's hanging on too long for a team that made such huge strides in this season. So that's my word for the Chargers. And finally, of course, last but certainly not least, we've got the Vikings. Thomas, what is your one word for the Vikings?
The word is presentiment. Okay? The definition is a feeling something bad will happen. I feel like walking into watching Monday Night Football, there was a part of me that was like, something bad's about to happen. I don't know who it's going to happen to or how it will happen, but something bad is going to happen. And sure enough, I was right. But in the case of the Vikings, it was proven more than ever. This is a team that I don't think this usually happens in the NFL. I think this might have been the first time this ever happened in NFL history, actually. They lost to the same two teams in the same season in back-to-back weeks. That happened. That happened. And just see the downward spiral of the Vikings to go from where they was at to be a 14-win team, to be in the wild card round, to be in the playoffs, to go from that to only putting up 9 points again. Guys, what is going on here? Back-to-back week with just 9 points? I'm pretty sure I can do that on Madden without my eyes closed. It was brutal to watch. So I would have to say pre-sentiment for sure, because I just had a feeling something bad was going to happen. I just didn't know how bad or how reckless it was going to be, but that's the word, because my God, I didn't think it was going to be that bad.
This is why you have the black on. You predicted the future.
Somewhat,
All right, Dan, I know you're really excited for this one. So what is your word for the Vikings?
So I wanted to use frauds because I believe that they were fraudulent the whole year. I think they were playing above and beyond and so on and so forth. They were 14-3. You got to give them credit for that, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, reality set in. So I'm going to use reality check, right? That's what it was for them. Maybe that's a phrase, not one word, but it's 2 words, reality check. That's what the Vikings had last week. It was a reality check with who they have at quarterback. It was a reality check with who they are as a team. It was a reality check on so many different levels. I mean, you go out there into a playoff game, and you manufacture 9 points in that game. I mean, it was awful. It was real bad. So, you know what I mean? This was more indicative of, to me, who they are in reality, as opposed to, they got off to that hot start and they really kind of rode the wave, you might say. And credit to them for doing that. You know what I mean? That's what you have to do. You get on a hot streak, a heater, and you continue it. You keep it rolling as long as you can. And I'm not being hypocritical when I say this, because the Bears, we were fraudulent. We had a reality check in 2018. A lot of people don't like to admit it, but that team played above and beyond what they were capable of. They rode that wave for a little while, and then when they played in the playoffs, reality set in. We missed a field goal. We looked stupid, and we've been bad ever since. So it was a reality check. Same thing for Minnesota. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen going forward into next year or whatever, because you got time to turn it around and things like that. But it's a reality check because everybody was riding this wave of, Sam Darnold, he's now going to be that guy. Are they going to extend him, so on and so forth? I think those questions have been put to bed.
All right, one thing for you guys. The Rams blitzed Sam Darnold 9 times in this game. And on those 9 blitzes, they had 7 pressures and 3 sacks. Darnold only had 15 passing yards. So obviously, my word is going to be 2 words. It's going to be one noted. I think they were too reliant on Sam Darnold. They were too reliant on these major breakout moments that he had. The running game was a big flaw. Like, Aaron Jones had his great games, but then there was times where he wasn't utilized in a way that was going to make them have these explosive plays. It wasn't going to give the Vikings that leg up where they needed it. So I definitely felt like the offense was a little one-noted, and the defense started off fantastic. They had so much to live up to, and there was just so many. The first 4 games when they're undefeated, you're like, this defense is electric. It's the reason that they're there. And then it just became too much on Sam Darnold, which had him fall into the familiarity we all know him as like, he can't really roll out. There's just flaws that he's got. So I think in this matchup, it was very one-noted, and it was revealed against the Lions. So the Rams just used that to their advantage, which is very unfortunate. Jeez. All right. I think you guys did a very good job, honestly.
Okay, I'm glad that we're leaving a team off of this, because I feel like their loss.
Oh, you're right. Sorry.
Just as much as a win as anything else.
I knew. I was like, wait, I'm counting. I'm missing something. All right, we'll do the Buccaneers.
Go ahead, Dan.
You want me to go? All right.
Go ahead.
Tampa Bay. I'm gonna say more of the same is expected, man. These. What happened with them is expected, in my opinion. Once again, this is a team, you give them credit for getting there. They played in a weak division. Atlanta act like they didn't want the division. They end up giving it back to them. You got to remember that this team, they went 1-5 at one point during the regular season. They went on a real bad situation and bad timing or bad stretch of games, you might say. And I think that was who that team is, right? And once again, this is a team that played above and beyond. They were overachievers. So they did work hard. You got Mike Evans out there who did his thing. I give Baker Mayfield his credit for some of the stuff that he did, but I think they just did not have enough star power. They just did not have enough guns, weaponry, to kind of keep up and playoff football and really come to the table and get a W. So I think it was expected. It was apropos for what they were as a team, and that's what I'm gonna leave it as.
All right, Thomas, what's your word for the Bucs?
The word for the Bucs is gelid.
Okay.
Gelid means very cold. You ever watch a movie that was so great, and then you get to the ending and it's like, that's how it ends? That's how it ends. I watched a playoff game that was actually good, because all the other games were trash. All the other games were not worth watching. There were snooze fests all over the place. This was the one game that was actually entertaining from start to finish, and it ended in a doink. That's how it ended. Very cold. I mean, that is a very cold way to end your season if you're a Bucs fan. So Shout out to Baker. Shout out to the Bucks, because I still have not had anybody tell me what NFL team has been able to do this before. They were swept by a team in division and still won the playoffs. Still won the division. I've never seen that happen in the same season. Never happened before. But I just think the way that they were able to battle throughout that game, and for it to end in the manner that it did, gelid, man. Very cold. Jeez Louise.
All right. Well, I'm going to roll off of that. So Thomas said this was the most exciting game. Did you guys know that this was the worst performing Sunday night wildcard game in 4 years? All right.
Wow.
On NBC, there were 29 million viewers, down 19% from last year, which was the Rams-Lions game.
Oh, that's to be expected. That's fair.
Sure, but 19% is
drop,
big.
though. Jesus.
That's
So
Tampa
my word
Bay.
is going to be, yeah, I guess. That makes
It's
sense.
Tampa Bay.
My word's going to be unlucky. I think the Bucks were very unlucky. You lose Chris Godwin in a huge blowout game that he did not need to be a part of anymore. You barely scraped through on some games, and in this one, you can't expect to win a wild card game on a tying field goal. Like, that's just not how you play playoff football. So I think for the entire season, it's been very unlucky. Everyone's been rooting for Baker in this breakout season, similar to how we've been rooting for Sam Darnold. But I just think losing Chris Godwin was one of the biggest losses, and that just resulted in them falling into this place and losing on Sunday. So that's my word for them, is unlucky. Thanks for reminding me, Thomas.
Oh, man. It was
We're just going to leave Tampa Bay off the board, the biggest game of the weekend.
Because that was the team that out of everybody that lost, it did not feel like they lost. You know what I mean? Like, it felt like, now don't get me wrong, Baker's fumble, some of the mistakes that they had during that game, sure, like, come on. But out of all the teams that played, this was the team that was like, you had a chance to actually beat them. Like, this was about as much of an even split of a matchup throughout the entire wildcard weekend. And to have that end in the manner that it did, like it I'm sorry, that sucks. Dan, I don't want to use the Bears as a reference point, so forgive me, but there's so many times where the doink goes in the opposite direction. So when it goes in, it makes it even worse.
Yeah.
So it's like, to see that end the way that it did, it was brutal. It was brutal to watch.
I thought he was going to miss it. I thought we were going to overtime.
I thought so too.
I was like, ooh, he's really nervous. We figure out he has OCD. Everyone's talking about it.
Yeah. When he was rubbing his hair and all that.
Yeah. I was like, oh, he's about to miss it because he's so overwhelmed. As a kicker, they're always relying on you in the last 5 seconds they allot you. So I was like, oh, we're going to overtime. Like, we got to get some more food. But somehow the gods were on the Commanders' side, and they got to break that playoff drought.
Hey, I ain't making fun of him, but I was watching him go through that tick process, and a part of me was like, I wonder if he went through his hair one more time, that it would have went wide right, wide left. Like, I wonder if that's what it was going to take. Like, I wonder if he had to do, like, you know how you had to do, like, a 10-second count, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. I feel like once he got to 10, like, he realized, all right, that's enough. Let's just kick the field goal and get this over with. Because I feel like if I do this one more time, we might miss. So that's the only thing that crossed my mind. Like, I was like, man, okay, is this like a superstitious thing? I'm with it. I'm down for it.
All right. I know we touched on the Broncos and Chargers with our one words, but I just want to hear the AFC West, huge contending division. They made a 180 and held up against their own, which was the Chiefs, and made it to the playoffs. So I wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on the Chargers season overall, and then we'll talk about the Broncos after that. So Thomas, why don't you start?
I'm gonna keep this very brief and very simple. Anytime a team goes from drafting 5th overall to being the 5th seed in the AFC,
is a successful season.
Does that make it any clearer for anybody else? Because I've seen so much discourse in the past 48 to 72 hours about how bad Jim Harbaugh is, how much they choked, how much of a joke they are. Justin Herbert isn't good, all this other stuff. Do you remember what the conversation was about the Chargers this time last year? We were trying to figure out if they were going to be dumb enough to keep Brandon Staley as a head coach. Okay, remember that was a thing. Okay, and remember that they already had issues on the roster where they were trying to figure out who was going to stay and who was going to go. And ultimately, they decided on kicking the tires on Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Both went to franchises to where one of them eventually got to the playoffs, but had to get traded to the team to get there. And then the other guy played in Chicago where they were struggling all year. So that's how that went. He got his money, though. Shout out to him. But those two guys kicked the can. They kept Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, a guy who, please don't retire. Please don't retire. But it looks like he's going to, which I don't blame him. He decided to go with those guys. And literally this entire year, I'll have my hand up and say it. I thought for sure that they were going to finish third, maybe second, given the division that they were in. They definitely wasn't finished first because of Kansas City. But I thought 2, 3 would suffice, and they would not be in the playoffs. They did that. So, I mean, it's a successful season. It just did not end out in the manner that it was supposed to, the way the rest of the year has been. But I would say a successful year for the Los Angeles Chargers. I'm still trying to get used to saying that.
You're not
feels
alone.
like San Diego. Feels like San Diego.
You're not
Feels
alone.
like it.
All right, Dan, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts when it comes to the Chargers, similar to Thomas, it was expected though. Like I hate to keep using the word expected, but you know, if you know Jim Harbaugh, you know what he's going to do. He's going to run the ball. He's going to play defense. And they already had a pretty decent defense, right? I don't think they were really indicative of the fifth worst team last year, right? So, you know, while I understand what Thomas is saying there, I just push back a little bit because I think they had some weapons. You got a quarterback in Justin Herbert who's really good. You got he's going to come in there. He's going to lean heavily upon the run game. I knew what Jim Harbaugh was going to do when he got there, and he did exactly what I thought he was going to do. It's what he did in Michigan. It's what he did at Stanford. It's what he did at San Francisco. This has been his MO. This is his formula for winning football games. So I think he's done a good job of cutting down some of the turnovers, taking the ball out of Justin Herbert's hands and putting it into the running back's hands, and making it a game where you don't have to lean heavily on one side or just one throwing the ball. You cut some of them throws down. You let the ball, the guys run the ball, and you develop your quarterback that way. You develop the other players around him that way as well. So I think he's done a good job of that. It was a successful season for them. When it comes to the Broncos, you can't bang them too much, man. They went up against Buffalo, and like I said, Buffalo's a little juggernaut out there, man. They do a lot of things well. You're playing in Buffalo. That's always a concerning situation whenever you got to go in there and play in that house. Is similar like Detroit. They have their fans are there. They participate. They're active. You know what I mean? So, when you play those types of teams, it was to be expected that they would lose the game. I didn't trip on it, and I don't think fans should trip on it either. And as much as I hate to do it, I got to give Sean Payton his credit for being able to get that team to the number 7 seed. Even though they got into the playoffs barely, they got there though. So you got to give them credit for it. I give both of those teams and both of those coaches a little bit of credit for what they've done.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna follow up on you and say that the way that Harbaugh was leading with the running game, it wasn't going to be successful when you're missing your top running back. And so I think they were just banking on too much past success to bring them to the future. And I mean, I picked the Chargers to win. I did not think the Texans could do it. And technically, the Texans defense is what brought them to that victory. They were completely taking over. I mean, Justin Herbert threw 4 interceptions, had only 3 on the season. So you can really give credit specifically to the corners that are on the Texans team. But I think the Chargers and the Broncos combination really overcame a lot of doubt, and they performed very well this season. It was very exciting to see them actually put up a competitive action against the Chiefs. Like, you watch those 6 games, and you're like, Raiders blowout, Chargers blowout, and then you see I don't even watch the AFC West half the time because you know what you're expecting. And I think this season really turned things around, and they can only both grow from there. So that's my idea on the AFC West here. All right, we're gonna take a quick break for everybody tuning in, and then we're gonna continue on with should the Steelers move on from Mike Tomlin and what is going on with Aaron Darnold. So BRB.
You are watching Team NBS Media. We are a digital media brand covering sports, entertainment, and lifestyle, with team members all across the country. Through our written content, podcasts, and video content, we bring you fresh and professional content. Interested in joining the team? Shoot us an email or DM. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe.
In 2006, we founded Yeti Coolers with a simple mission: build a cooler we use every day if it existed. One that was built for the serious outdoor enthusiasts rather than for mass discount retailers. One that could take the abuse we knew we'd put it through, out in the field and on the water. One that simply wouldn't break. We decided early on that production innovation would come from necessity and first-hand experience, not from market research and data analysis. Today, Yeti products perform when it matters most. Whether that be an excursion into the remote Alaskan wilderness, chasing redfish on the Gold Coast, or just getting together with friends in the backyard, we make gear that helps you stay out longer, travel farther, and live harder. #built for the wild.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our Wildcard Weekend recap show, an early one, and I'm here with Thomas and Dan. And we just went through all of the losers, and now we're going to talk about some other news chatter, team chatter, as Jeff would say. So I'm curious to hear what your guys' thoughts are on the Packers. Like, what is their Achilles heel that really stops them from progressing in the playoffs? And I'm going to start with Dan, of course.
Well, I touched on it when we talked about, the Packers being a losing team in the playoffs. And that is that you just really can't depend on Jordan Love, in my opinion. You can't depend on him to carry you to victory, right? There are quarterbacks that can carry you to victory. Pat Mahomes can carry you to victory. Joe Burrow can carry you to victory. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, these guys can carry you to victory. Jordan Love is a nice quarterback. He's good. He's developing. He's doing some things well. They paid him a ton of money, right? And the money he gets paid is basically saying, hey, you should be able to do the things that these other guys are doing. But at the same time, they know that. I believe that organization knows that he is not, on that level. He's not one of those guys that can carry you to victory, pull everybody along and drag them to victory if you need them to. So I think that's their Achilles heel right now. They'll be a good team. They'll make waves. They'll win games. They may do some things. And if they ever get it to a situation where they can kind of create this development for him to where he can turn into that guy at some point in time, then maybe it works out for them. But as of right now, that's the problem with them. I just don't believe that he has that whatever it takes to carry the team to that victory. I think they really need to lean heavily upon Josh Jacobs. That's why they brought him in, because they knew they were going to have to run the ball. You cannot put the ball in his hands and say, hey, go win it. You know what I mean? And that's basically their Achilles heel as of right now. It can change, but we'll see how it goes in the coming years.
All right, Thomas, you want to follow up, or do you want a different question?
No, please give me the time of day on this one.
Okay, hit it.
I mean, look, like I said, I want to preference my comments by saying that I already am aware that I have this banner back here, and I am a very duly noted Eagles fan. Okay? Now that we got that off the board, here we go. I feel like the Achilles heel for the Packers is they need clarity on offense. Like, seriously. Like, I don't know if it's an identity crisis that they have going on or what, but I just have a few questions for them. Number one, who's your wide receiver one? Is it Christian Watson? Is it Jaden Reed? Is it Romeo Dobbs? Is it Dontavian Wicks? Is it Tucker Kraft? Is it Lucas Musgrave? Is it a tight end? I don't know. You want to know why I don't have that answer? Because when I watched y'all play against the Eagles on Sunday, your second best receiver was Josh Jacobs, who had 40 yards. That's not going to cut it. And no, by the way, in case you're wondering who was the team leading receiver, yeah, it was Jaden Reed before he got hurt. And he had 46 yards. So we have questions about who in the hell is their number one option at wide receiver. And then next, and Dan alluded to this already, will LaFleur actually change the game plan to have it feature Josh Jacobs, the guy that you signed in the offseason? Because I'm looking at the stats here. He had 18 carries for 81 yards and a touchdown. But obviously, he had that one big run that was 31 yards. So if you take away that one big run, he had 17 carries for 50 yards. What are we doing? like, I don't know if it's an offensive line issue. I don't know if I don't know. But it feels to me like they are lacking some sort of an identity with how they want to play. And they're overly reliant on Jordan Love to be the savior, when I kind of feel like you should pivot after he's thrown the second interception. But apparently that's not what you want to do. You want to keep throwing the ball. He threw the ball 33 times. I'm pretty sure after you threw the pick the first time, it's like, all right, you know what? Let's settle down, Jordan. Let's get some quick throws out if we're going to. But we need to start featuring a running game. And it was like that was non-existent. Just kept throwing the ball. And that's similar to a coach that I will be discussing when it comes to Sam Darnold in a little bit. But it just seemed like they had no clue what they wanted to do in their offense. And I feel like that's their biggest Achilles heel. Of course, they have injuries that they had to work on and things of that nature. They got hurt in that game. Duh. But just the game plan itself was not good. And it was telling everybody that either something's wrong with Josh Jacobs, we don't like using Josh Jacobs, or what. But Jordan Love is who we got, and that's who we're going to rely on to throw the ball 30 plus times a game. And you can't do that after he's thrown 3 interceptions. So that's the thing. You need to figure out some type of clarity in your offense if you think that this is going to work long term.
Yeah, that was literally what I was going to say. So there's no need for me to follow up. I think having no knowledge of where you're going to go, you have 6 different guys you're throwing the ball to every week. We're like watching on fantasy, of course. Like Dontavian Wicks is scoring one week, then he's not playing. Then Christian Watson has a huge game, he's not playing. It's like the never-ending carousel is just too much to keep up with. All right, my next question. This is clearly just like a wild card team chatter combination show.
Love it.
What do you guys think the Steelers should do in regards to how the head coaching should look like? I think it's the talk of the week is Mike Tomlin. And I want to hear what your guys' thoughts are regarding Mike Tomlin. Should he stay with the Steelers? Should they move off of him? Should another team bring him on to coach up a quarterback? Yeah, Thomas, we'll run it back to you.
This conversation is just so laughable to me. You want to know why? I'm going to keep this brief too.
Mike Tomlin should do whatever he wants.
He wants to stay? Cool. He wants to leave? Cool. I do not care. Because last time I checked, Mike Tomlin don't play defense. And last time I checked, he don't play offense either. He is not on that field. And what I saw from the Pittsburgh Steelers,
Internet snooze fest that I brought up earlier today,
was a joke. Okay? We had a Pittsburgh Steelers team that had a running back by the name of Najee Harris. Yeah, you remember that guy? That guy who was highly touted to be one of the best running backs, best young running backs in the league when he got out of Alabama. Yeah, that guy had 6 carries for 17 yards. Does that have something to do with Mike Tomlin? Okay, all right. Let's talk about the defense. Apparently, that's his baby. All right. They allowed almost 300 yards rushing. Is that Mike Tomlin too? Like, look, if y'all want him to go, let it be because of something else. Don't make it seem like he's just this terrible coach that doesn't know what he's doing. Because if he didn't know what he was doing, there ain't no way in hell he gets to the playoffs with Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, the QB carousel, and wins 10 games and gets into the playoffs. There ain't no way that he gets into the playoffs with Kenny Pickett as his quarterback. There ain't no way he gets into the playoffs with Big Ben, who is literally hobbling on his way down the field every single drive and having them go to the playoffs. So, literally, Mike Tomlin can do whatever he wants. You're not sure about Pittsburgh? Fine. Leave it. Go somewhere else where you deserve to be. But this whole idea of the Pittsburgh Steelers should get rid of him or they should let him go or we're tired of Mike Tomlin. You know, there's franchises that would love to be in your situation right now. Because, I mean, I'm pretty sure Raiders fans, Ashmere, would love to see the Raiders in the playoffs every once in a while. That doesn't usually happen for them. Dan, a Bears fan, he mentioned the last time they were in the playoffs was in 2018. I'm pretty sure he would like to see his team in the playoffs on a consistent basis. Don't be spoiled brats, is my point. So if you want to get rid of Mike Tomlin, great. Just be careful for who comes next after him. Because if he ends up sucking, ends up being worse than Mike Tomlin ever imagined, bro, we in for a long ride. I mean it. So Mike Tomlin should do whatever he wants.
All right. Dan?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Thomas on this one, man. Like, you gotta look at it for what it is when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm gonna just throw a couple things out there. 14 years, right? He's not had a losing record. He's not been below 5. He's not even been 500. He's been above 500 for 14 straight years. On the other end of that spectrum, the New York Jets have not had a winning season in 14 years.
No.
Think about that. So what do you complain? You know what I mean? You're complaining and crying and moaning, and it's just it's crazy to think of how successful the man has been in this situation. You know, I look at it and it reeks of what happened with Lovie Smith in Chicago. You know what I mean? He was fired after a 10-6 season. You know what I mean? He was fired, and they let him go, and we haven't been relevant pretty much since then. I mean, we had a season where we popped up, 2018. Like I said, we were frauds that year, and we went right back down to where we belonged. So it is what it is. You know, this guy has been able to produce. He's been producing with inferior players and inferior talent. And one thing that people have to realize is that this is the NFL. The NFL is designed for teams to rise up and teams to fall, right? That's the way the draft is set up, right? So when you're a team like Pittsburgh and you're always pretty good, you're not getting high draft picks. You're not getting impact players, right? You're making do with Kenny Pickett. you're making do with getting old free agent quarterbacks like Russell Wilson. You see what I'm saying? But he's still able to draw this out of these players because he is a darn good coach. He's a really, really good coach because he gets the best out of his players. They believe in him. They're always there. Most of the time they're disciplined, things like that. You do have some, you know, guys like Antonio Brown that pop up here and there, but for the most part, you got really good guys in that locker room, man. And it's a culture that has endured and stood the test of time. So you got to give him credit for what he's doing. And people like Thomas said, man, stop being so, you know, hey man, trust me, be careful what you wish for, because we did the same thing, and we've been struggling trying to find a quarterback, trying to find a coach ever since Lovie Smith left. And he took us to the Super Bowl. He took us to NFC Championship games in 2010 or whatever it was. That was the last time we were really relevant, and that's what we had. You be careful. You don't want to be like the Jets and missing 14, you know, having 14 straight losing seasons after having 14 with a winning coach.
Yeah, I think you both make very good points. But I have to ask, what do you think is stale on the Steelers. Like something's stale, right? Like there is a problem. They're not winning these games. And you can't just say it's the Baltimore Ravens. Like next year they could play somebody else. So
they don't have a quarterback.
Okay. So if he keeps Russell Wilson.
Who's that?
Did
you just see him recently? Did you see him recently? You want him as your quarterback? Okay, seriously. Okay, let's put this in the perspective of the ulterior fan, okay? If your team had Russell Wilson 1 year, Justin Fields in the same year, Kenny Pickett for 3, Big Ben on his last legs, and you literally could not get rid of him because of whatever contract negotiations that was going on with his deal at the time. You literally could not let him go. Would you want those guys starting for your rosters today? Would you want those guys starting as starting quarterbacks for your team? Yes or no? I'm pretty sure a lot of people will say no. So that is it. When you're in a division that has, I don't know, Lamar Jackson, who is a 2-time winning MVP, could possibly win 3. And when you have a guy who's been to the AFC Championship game and has been to the Super Bowl, and Joe Burrow, yeah, it's very hard to win in that division by default. It makes it even worse when you do not have a good quarterback. Tomlin has not had a good quarterback since what, 2014? Seriously, guys, like, let's be honest here. They can't do anything because their quarterback situation has always been a joke. It's hard to take them serious.
Here's another thing. I'm gonna just throw this out there too. Like, here's another thing. It's not only the quarterback situation, right? You have an old and aging quarterback, but Russ is still able to do some good, right? Even when Justin was in there, he was 4-2. He had 10 touchdowns to 1 interception on the season. 10. When I say 10, it's not just passing; it's rushing and passing. You know what I mean? So he was 10-1 on the season in 6 games, and he was playing well at quarterback. So you have those things, but here's the problem: your weapons around them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You're leading your supposedly best wide receiver is who? George Pickens. We know there's issues there, bro. There's real issues there. You know what I mean? Your next wide receiver after George Pickens is Van Jefferson. We know he has a case of the dropsies. He's had that since he came into the league. That's why he's not with the Rams anymore. You know what I mean? You got Mike Williams. You got Lance McCutcheon. You got, Roman Wilson. He's on the IR. So, you have these guys that are not really top-notch guys. Are they number one? Is anybody a number one receiver out there? I always ask people, when you say you want a quarterback to throw for 3,500, 4,000 yards, whatever you might want them to do, whatever you might expect them to do, I ask them, who's going to catch 1,200 to 1,500 yards? Who's going to be that receiver to get that? Is it going to be George Pickens? He ain't going to do it. He's not going to get 1,200 yards. He ain't going to get 1,400 yards. That's what you get when you have a quarterback that can put up numbers like that, unless he's absurdly talented at spreading the ball around. You're going to have a dominant wide receiver. You're going to have to. And they don't have that. They have a bunch of number 2s, maybe some number 3s in there sprinkled in. That's what they have. And that's what you have. So they have to upgrade their talent, their weaponry around the quarterback if you're going to place the blame on the quarterback. It is some on the quarterback, right? They need somebody that's going to take the reins and say, let's run with it. You know what I mean? Maybe that's Justin Fields. Maybe it ain't. I don't know. But it's not Russ because he's 36, 37 years old. It's the end of the road for him. So it is what it is.
All right. Very, very good points, you guys. I think you're both correct in the sense of the Steelers need to change, and it doesn't have to be Mike Tomlin. It could literally be any other piece of the offense that all needs to be changed and revamped and made young once again. All right, my last question for our show is going to be, what in the world happened to Sam Darnold? He was absolutely cooking this entire season, had people thinking he was getting a nice $40 million contract, and completely fell flat against the Lions, which we all expected, and now is out of the playoffs. So we'll run it back to Dan, because this is his division. This is his time to shine.
Well,
he has probably a lot to say.
I hate to say I told you so, but this is what the Vikings are. They They weren't this top-notch team. They weren't the cream of the crop, you might say. They were 14-3. They got some wins. They rode that little wave. Sam Darnold did his thing. He is working with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, though. He has. That's what we're talking about, right? Like think back years ago, when in the days of Randy Moss and Chris Carter and Jake Reed. Remember that? Y'all remember that?
Yep.
Who was throwing him the ball? Who was throwing those guys the ball? Dante Culpepper. He wasn't that good. But he was made to look very, very good in that offense because he had those wide receivers. When you're throwing to Chris Carter and you're throwing to Randy Moss, two of the all-time greats. Yeah, it's not hard. It's not hard to, you know what I mean? It makes the game much easier for you. You know what I'm saying? So that's what we have. You have Justin Jefferson. He's getting open, and it made Sam Darnold look a little bit better than what he was. He is not that guy. I think he came back down to earth. I liken it to a birthday balloon. I'll use Christy because she's my co-host on Following the Play. It was her birthday recently, right? She's 33 years old. Congratulations, so on and so forth, right? But you ever seen those balloons that are, happy birthday, and they go up and they're filled with helium and they're all the way up in the air. They go all the way up. And then after a couple of days, it starts to fall. It's about halfway. It's in the middle of the room. Now it's almost on the floor. It's not yet touching the floor, but it's almost on the floor. That was Sam Darnold. He had a slow, precipitous fall from grace from the top, and it is like the helium was coming out of that balloon. And that's what it was. He's not that good, people. Like he'll get paid somewhere because some foolish team will give him some money, but he's not the end all be all. He's not the answer for any organization, any franchise. It is what it is. And I'm not just saying this because, I want them to fail or whatever the case may be. I'm just saying this because it's the facts. Look at what happened. He went down. He came back down to reality. It was a reality check for that team. It was a reality check for the fan base. It was a reality check for media. It was a reality check for so many people because all of a sudden, the same issues that happened with Sam Darnold, all of a sudden they reared their ugly heads again. And it was because he is not that guy.
He's bowing now.
It's the truth. They're gonna be mad at me, but it's the truth.
I think that was one of the best analogies to describe an evolving quarterback. 18 weeks is a long time. You can't keep those balloons up for 18 weeks.
Woo. Oh, I've never seen somebody. Okay, no, I'm lying because I've done it before. I've never had someone do an analogy and still have to be in the doghouse by the time this show is over. It's never happened before. But again, I'm lying because that's happened to me. So I can't go too far. But Sam Darnold, man. I genuinely, obviously, with the way that he played on Monday was bad. We understand that, right? We all in agreement that did happen. Okay, cool. Awesome. I am not putting all of that game on him, though. Okay? Hear me out. There's this guy that, a lot of people are putting in the conversation for Coach of the Year, and rightfully so. A guy who is supposed to be the combination of Bill Walsh meeting Mike Shanahan with a sprinkle of Sean McVay. That's how everybody's talking like he is. I'm talking about Kevin O'Connell. You see, since we're going with analogies, you ever have that relationship where, like, y'all go on a good stretch, y'all going on dates routinely, y'all taking care of one another on a consistent basis, y'all watching each other's back, y'all taking care of each other on so many different levels, right? And then all of a sudden, something changes, and no one says it out loud. It just happens. It's like something you feel internally, and no one says it. Okay. I feel like that's what happened to Sam Darnold. I feel like Kevin O'Connell low-key cheated on him without saying that he cheated on him. Okay. He had this man throw the ball 40 times. 40. Okay. Now, I don't know about you, but unless your name is Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, even Lamar Jackson, I don't want you throwing the ball 40 times half the time. Josh Allen, unless your name is any one of those guys, I don't want you getting even close to 35, let alone 40. And it was like every single possession that the Vikings had on Monday night, it was pass, 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 pass. We're going for it on fourth down. Guess what the play call is going to be? Pass, pass again, pass some more, pass one more time. It's like, guys, wait a second. You're only down by 2 scores. Maybe if you consider, I don't know, running the football just a little bit more so you can get a play action game going, you might be able to cut the lead down just a tad, or at least get to the other side of the field. Half the time, y'all having 3 and outs, and y'all still on your own 30, 40-yard line. So it's like, O'Connell, you have other guys on your roster. You have a solid running game. Aaron Jones is not a scrub. Last time I checked, he can run the football, and he actually runs it very, very well. What happened? So obviously, yes, you want to point to Sam Darnold throwing an interception, him having to fumble. Sure, fine, that's cool, whatever. I'm not saying that he was playing like Peyton Manning in his prime or something. I'm not saying that at all. But I feel like he was done dirty in the most craziest way possible by O'Connell. He got it on, man. And it happens to the rest of us. I feel like that's what happened. Because that would have been it. He would have got the ball, and then, there would have been a consistent running game, consistent passing game. None of that.
Sorry, Thomas, you were cutting out. I think.
Really? Oh, geez. Okay. Oops.
All right.
See, I feel like just off of me saying pass, I just feel like I just passed myself out of here.
I think
myself out of here. That's what happened.
Dan's analogy was like the best example. Like, he started off extremely high in the clouds and then just fell flat when it came down to it. And he had 2 elite wide receivers right there. So I can't even top it, Dan. That was very good.
Appreciate you.
All right, my friends. This has been some fun times recapping the wild team chatter, the games of the weekend, and in 3 more days, we're going to have more exciting football. So for everyone tuning in, thank you. We appreciate you. And we'll be here again Saturday, Sunday, talking about all of the games coming up for the divisional rounds. Thanks, Thomas and Dan, for all of your knowledge and the vocab lesson from Thomas's side.
He gave it to us. He gave us a deep one.
Yeah, he did. All right. Be sure to tune in to Moving the Chains on Saturday, Sunday. Everyone will be here. I think Thomas is hosting.
I believe so. If I'm not doing that, I know I definitely have off the dome on Friday, which I want to let y'all in a little secret. It will be a special guest interview on the show. I am so excited, very stoked. A special certain someone will be joining me on the show on Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Very excited for that. But there is going to be something coming up on Saturday after the playoff games are through that I'll be hosting. So just be prepared to deal with a lot of
busy weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty insane. Trust me. Got a lot on my plate to do. But I enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, no. Steve's here. The ghost of Sam Darnold from New York. He chimed in right at the end when we were talking Sam Darnold.
That's it.
He's seeing ghosts.
Oh, Sam, poor guy. All right, everyone. Thank you. It's okay. You can go now. Enjoy your dinner. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to Moving the Chains. We'll be back. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and we will see you all on Saturday. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow Team NBS Media everywhere you go. Follow Thomas and Danikin on X and myself, and we will see you in 3 days. Bye.